because I can never stay by them. I didn't do it in the World Conference either and got yelled at for that too, so when I presented. But, you know, I'm the chair of the inspection division for ASQ, and I'm also the scholarship chair for Cincinnati section, so I appreciate you coming in and, you know, spend some time with you here today. Again, that's just really what I was talking about. Let's talk about what the audit findings, what they really are. I'm going to do a little bit of background, and then we're going to get into some actual information. Is that fair? But ask questions anytime you need to. This is supposed to be interactive. I don't want to sit here and talk the whole time. I can do that, and people know there's several in here that's been with me knows that I can do that. Let's talk about what the definition is. One of the most misunderstood definitions. Does it say anything about nonconformities? Does it? On the definition of a finding? So a finding can be an opportunity for improvement, it could be a strength, or it can be a nonconformity. So the opportunities are there, and we focus all of our energy on what? Things that are nonconformities. And that we shouldn't, because that's not what the audit is. The audit is what is. Not what we want it to be. It's what we see, what actually is there. So conformity, by definition, is no problem exists, but opportunity for improvement may be identified. So just because it conforms doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity. Because you might be just making it. How many people just try to just make it? We get there and we just made it inside the spec. We're good, aren't we? Well, we could talk about Taguchi and we'll get into that one. Nonconformity, minors or majors. And I hate that definition of minor and major because they really don't matter. What is it? It's an opportunity where we could fall flat on our face. So it doesn't matter if it's minor, because a minor to one person could be a major to another. So there's a lot of times when something is a deficiency that it's an interpretation, but you turn around the next day and it becomes a disaster. So we don't want to get in there and focus so much about the minor and majors. But opportunities for improvement, get used to that definition. ISO 9001, 2015, for those that have not seen the draft. Preventive action has been eliminated. We are now talking about risk and opportunities for improvement. So opportunities for improvement are now built into the future requirements. So what are they trying to get us to do? Look where we have weaknesses. Proactive approach again. So that's the driver of the process approach, not nonconformities. We do not audit for nonconformities. We audit to what is, and then evaluate it against whatever the criteria is. You tell me, the standard might tell me, customer may tell me, but what is it? And so nonconformities is supposed to be, what's the difference between minor and major? I see the definitions. Tell me, what's your definition of minor and major? Anybody got an idea? I know what they say up there. That's easy. But you know how many fights you get into about what's a major and what's a minor.
Well, a major would be something that's going to cause bad product to go out the door.
Okay, that's one good interpretation, right? That's what aerospace uses. That's what automotive uses, and many organizations also adopt that, and auditors do. If there's a risk, I'm shipping bad product. Immediately, it's going to be, can be assessed as a major. Which means what? The system broke down in more than one place. Does one process by itself actually break it down if it ships normally? What has to happen? A whole weakness of a system has to cascade down to get the product to get out the door, unless it just got what? Damaged in shipping. Right? That could happen. Damage in shipping by itself. But if it's bad product, there's many places within the organization where there was opportunities that failed. That's the system failure, right? When you got more than an isolated single process by itself. So anytime that your product gets to the customer, it's always an opportunity for a major nonconformity. Do we give them that way? No, because everybody wants to fire everybody. But that's not really what the definitions are. So, audit findings. Let's start. We talked about our whole topic. If you can't cite it, very first thing is if you don't have objective evidence, it isn't a finding. Could be your opinion, could be a thought, but you can't back it up. It is nothing. So if you don't have objective evidence, that's what they keep telling us. That's what they're forcing us with. And many of you know what caused all this back in the mid-2000s, a little situation, that occurred with tires and turned over vehicles, changed all of our lives in auditing. And from that moment, we got 19,011 as an auditing standard, 17021, IAF coming out with all new requirements. We had the competency requirements for auditors, for third party. All of that was a byproduct of having ourselves get embarrassed as auditors. And, we did it. Also, we need consensus between auditors. You ever been to have an audit with your coworkers and the auditors are fighting with each other and then one of them go out, well, I didn't mean to give you a nonconformity. Joe wanted to give you the nonconformity, that's why you got it. Is that really doing anything for the audit program? No, you got to get consensus. And again, the vote is, if there's a thing, someone's got to be the lead auditor, right? That's part of the requirements. So lead, that's it. But you can argue with it inside the room. When you come out, you got to be unified. But that also causes a lot of problems with findings. Somebody comes out outside and says, well, I didn't really think it was. It's like the jury coming in and said, well, I didn't think the person was guilty, but I voted anyways because so-and-so convinced me to go do that. And they get on CNN. We have some auditors that like to celebrate nonconformities. You ever see that? I got you. Oh, yeah, you got the I got you auditors. Anybody's had one of those? You got an argument with them? I know, I told you I'd get you. Yeah, you see the head shaking up and down a few times about that. And always provide a back door for the auditee. What does that mean? Give them. There might be, we do an audit, we do a sampling, right? If the auditee can come back and show you additional information, especially in internal audits, and we do it, they stress it to us on external, is at least evaluate it. Because until the actual report is even out, there's a chance to make changes. So why be closed-minded? You want to build a relationship. You want auditing not to be the Gestapo or the bad person or the police, right? That's what we need to change. Process auditing is supposed to be proactive, not be, anti the organization like some people think we are, out there to get them, and we're just there to find nonconformities and give them heartburn. I've given some people heartburn before, but when I go back and look at it, I didn't make those bad processes. So if it's a bad process, it is what it is. So when you look at it all together, keep in mind again that we have conformity can be a lot of strengths. And why not tell people what they do well? How many audit reports do you read that the only thing it says is about everything that's negative? What says that an audit report has to be negative? The audit report is supposed to represent what you saw in the audit. So if there are strengths, there are positive things, tell it. And if there's things where, hey, I got a bad feeling about this, then let's take the opportunity for improvement, as we've seen in the definition, or where they may be at risk. Then we'll be left with whatever the nonconformities are. I mean, years ago, I used to audit for nonconformities, but that was 20 years ago. Process approach came out in 2000, and we all suffered pretty good about trying to understand from compliance type auditing to a conformity type auditing. Yes, sir.
I know you use the term conforming there. Some folks use the term compliance. So I was interested in what you were taking on that.
A Compliance is, there's two types of audits. There's conformity audits and there's compliance audits. Compliance is against a standard or a specific requirement. Do you make it or not? It's an attribute. So when I go in and I do OSHA type audits or EPA audits or FDA type audits, a lot of times you have a requirement that says, thou shalt do it this way. Do you or do you not? That's compliance. But in conformity, we're looking at how well does it work? Does it work well? And there's where the opportunities for improvement. Yeah, it just makes it, but there's some weakness there. And so we want to bring that attention to. So we just don't want to make it and just get by on it and skim right off the top. We want to see where there is some opportunities. Very good question. Anybody else have anything before we go on? Does that make sense? And there's where the criteria come in. And in a conformity audit, we do compliance as well as conformity all the time. But a compliance audit is normally just restricted to compliance. OSHA comes in, FDA comes in, there basically is a FAA. Yes, sir.
In the area that I work, one of my colleagues does vendor assessments for calibration service providers. Our laboratory is 17025 CalLab accredited. Oftentimes, the reason she's going out is for high risk, which means these are not accredited. So some of the things that she struggles with is you've got that part of the standard that says you need to manage your suppliers and the quality of services that they provide, but these people are not accredited. So
why aren't they accredited?
Really difficult.
So why aren't they accredited?
Sometimes they just don't want to be.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, I've been in that situation. You know, what you're doing is placing yourself at risk, at a high risk, and so you're taking that responsibility, right, for doing that.
Exactly what she does, but she walks that fine line between this is the minimum requirement, but you're not an accredited body.
Yeah, 17025 is basically a compliance type of audit. I mean, I do 17025 audits also, especially second party, for organizations, and it's more compliant, but we do get into some conformity in recent years, especially in the QMS side, trying to build a stronger system for the infrastructure. So that's where I would encourage, from the side of building the infrastructure, just try to improve it. Because if they're just getting by, that means their infrastructure has some problems. So help them strengthen the infrastructure. Anything else anybody has? So what's a value added? I can give nonconformities. I can give a bunch of them almost in every audit. I can walk down the street and give a bunch and find nonconformities if I look for them. I counted up the last audit, I could give 29 nonconformities. You know how many I actually gave? 6. Oh, I gave 6. Because the other 23 were not value added. Because it didn't affect product quality, didn't affect process stability, didn't affect safety or environment. But did I let them get away with it? No. Some of them got written up as opportunities for improvement. Some of them I just talked to the process owner and says, if I see it again next time, it's going to be written up. So it's a, oops, forgot to put a procedure was forgotten on a wall. Temporary work instruction. Someone forgot to sign something, but that's the only thing you've seen in the whole area. You're going to make a big deal about it and write it up because I can? Well, a lot of auditors do. But what value added is it? So there's part of the thing that used to happen to us as auditors. We'd write up everything. And technically we can. So it's hard to argue with somebody, but under the concept of auditing today and audit findings, we want to really focus the energy when everybody's been leaned out. How many of your organizations have been leaned out like crazy? So if you give somebody 29 nonconformities, how much attention do you think they're going to give to the other 23 that weren't vital, or even all 29? They had 6 that were really critical. I thought really affected their business. But if I gave them the 29, what is their thought process? What would be your thought process? Get it done. We got to get an answer in a few weeks. Go get them done. If you give them 6, do you think they could do better with their resource allocations? And that's what's important that we're trying to drive today. So part of value added is to really look at where is the organization putting themselves at risk and right the nonconformities that are at risk. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody have questions with that? Sometimes I get pushback on that from somebody. But I think if you think about our resources and how much limited we are today, which position would you rather be? And you got to think about that as internal auditors as well as external auditing. And one of the most important, keep opinions out of the audit. Nothing will get you in trouble as an auditor more than to start suggesting all sorts of things and telling them that don't know their business, because that's how it's interpreted. I was talking to a management rep that's a friend of mine, and I do their internal audits for corporate. Last night he called me up to schedule the corporate audit. He threw out his auditor last month, asked them to leave the facility because of that very thing. He warned them. He told them, we're here to do the audit. Appreciate the thing, but that's not what you're here for. And the auditor wouldn't stop, so he stopped the audit, called a register, and told them, get this person out of here, which is in their right to do. You have the contract. So I trained him well. He went through training. So as I tell people, when we're documenting audit findings, put yourself in the person that's receiving or the person that's going to actually be having to go out and take the action against that nonconformity. Place yourself in their position. Does it make sense for what you're saying? And does it add this so what concept? Is there impact on the business? That's the value added that we just talked about. So is there an impact on the business? Does it put them at risk? If not, ask yourself, is there some value to this? Can I fix it another way? Can I get their attention to it on a different way? And make sure you got enough information in your nonconformity. So let's talk about some. I like to throw examples up. So this is the interaction part. Yay, come on. All right, woo. So here's the finding. Everything that's here for the originals were the original nonconformities. So this is exactly what's taken off audit reports. Okay, so these are not made up. Clause 7.6, measuring devices not utilized in the calibration procedures must be removed, identified as reference only, or be included within the calibration system. So you think that's documented properly? What's wrong with it? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's not really saying too much. I don't know what to do to fix it, do I? So if I looked at this, first of all, what measuring devices were we talking about? Which is what you're saying partially, right? No evidence. What about the ones that are verified? Remember, the standard in 7.6 says what? Calibrated or verified, or verified. So there are instruments there that do they have a program and we're doing some verification? Or do they just totally blow the standard on that requirement? So they're not doing verification either. There's a lot of difference in how you would view that from a major, minor, or impact to the business, right? And as you just said, would I know what action to take? Heck, I don't even know what the problem is. Really, these are real. Of course, I just said impact would be just totally based on the type of measuring device, where it's being used, what it's being used for, right? We have none of that. We don't know who, what, where, when. So is there any information to fix it? And if you gave this to you, what would you do with it? I've been there before, and what boss tells you when you take it to them, they said, what? Go do something. We have to have, you got X number of days to fix this. You didn't get no out, did you? And unfortunately, we put people in that position. Anybody here been in that position? Yeah, there's a few. Hands are going down. Let's see if this one's a little different. The control of measuring devices was found to be inadequate. Several devices in the plant were noted to be out of calibration, and some did not have any serial numbers on them. Better. Yeah. What's the definition of inadequate? Anybody know? Can anybody give me something there? Yeah. So let's see what my mindset on this. Could this just be opinion? Way it was written? Yeah, very easily, right? So this may have no facts to back it up at all. Someone may look at the system and say, you know, I just don't think this works real well. So I'm going to write you up on it. So go fix your system. Fix what? So now we're talking about nonconformities. The whole basis here, if you can't cite it, you can't, but where do I even go with the requirements on this? Was this tied to a requirement? Is there a requirement that could be there? Yes.
Auditor is responsible for modifying the auditee's quality standard. I mean, I worked in automotive. We were responsible. We could write our procedure any way we wanted to, and then the auditor said, yes, you are doing what you said you were doing, or you weren't. As long as we get the TS requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So the auditor can hang around all day trying to help them fix their system, and that's really up to the auditor whether he wants to do that or not.
Well, in automotive, that's consulting, which means they'll lose their ability to audit for at least 2 years for that organization. They have caught because they'll take their ability to audit. IATF doesn't like that at all. And that's why a lot of people don't do it, and aerospace is going that direction too. They are pushing not to let auditors consult. And so that also restricts some things in that regards. Oh yeah, like I tell people, I tell people some things, still do, but we'll do it over a cup of coffee. And I say you can take these if you want them. If you don't, here's just some things I've seen, and if you want to write them down and do it, it's fine. If not, it's not going to have an impact on your audit, but here's some things, and usually they'll ask you, what do you think on some things or something like that. And so you just, most of the time, but I'm not going to put it in there as evidence or so. I'm not going to write it up as a nonconformity, and that's what we're trying to show because a lot of people will. They'll force them like this to be nonconformities. And then nobody knows what they're trying to fix.
But if you say their calibration system is inadequate and they've got things that are out of calibration, or things that aren't identified, I mean, it's up to the auditee's responsibility to go back. I mean, they're all professionals, I assume, to go back and look at their system and find out where their system's broken.
Well, that's true to a point, but it's like when I worked for Daimler out in Newcastle, we had 10,000 measuring devices. Now, if I said that and out there at 10,000 devices, which devices am I talking about? The ones in the gauge lab, the ones out in assembly, the one that, but was this in one location, one process? So there's where we're trying to point of going back and trying to provide something so things can get fixed of what really is happening. So the point you're making is the same thing I'm trying to is we need to provide them a good direction on where to go. If we want something really seen to be fixed, we got to give them information to help them go in that direction. Because who else seen it? A lot of times I'll do an audit, especially third party, and I get handed off by department to somebody new. Here's a guide, pick you up at this area, and the guy picks you up at that area, and they hand you off. And so through a day, I might have 7 people that seen in their own area, and they're just there for safety. They're not there for anything else. So you don't. And sometimes it guides you from where the problem areas are. Walk you this way instead of walking you that way. I've had that one too. Why can't we go down this way? It's better to go this way. Okay. Now, let's rewrite it a little bit. This one was changed a little bit. So we're going to take this one concept and kind of rewrite it a couple times. So is this better? So if I came back here, do they have at least a chance? They kind of have an idea. Do they have a chance to understand the impact on the organization? 4 out of 8. Is there an impact there? Half of them. So if there was 8 measuring devices, let's say there, and you did half of them and half of them are not right, there's a pretty good impact that something's not working in the system there. And it's only in one area because you've audited everywhere else. So I got a problem in one particular area is not being handled right. So that's better, but could it be improved? So let's talk about a different format. How many people have used the 3-part format? 1. How many people have seen the 3-part format then? Okay, partially. This is a requirement now of IAF that came out 2 years ago with the revision of 17021 that audit findings by all third party and encouraged for internal under contracts is to be in 3-part format. Now the IATF automotive started it several years ago in 2003 and it's come back to IAF now as an international requirement, which there are 3 parts. We don't care how, sometimes they're changed in order, but the first one's like an overall umbrella statement. What was, and that usually is what goes into management review. So this kind of helps in management review. Here's where our findings were. Then what is the actual cite it? There's a citing for this meeting. If you cannot go against and quote what particular part of the standard, their procedure, customer specifics requirements were that makes this a nonconformity, then you don't have a finding. And then third, what was that objective evidence? So now there's a check and balance. They should all be linked. So we separate it so that we just don't put this big paragraph that's got a lot of gobbledygook, I like to call it. Some people have heard that term of mine, which is a lot of BS in other words. So let's take that example again. So in the 3-part format, what is clause 7.6 supposed to do? Monitoring and measuring devices are supposed to be controlled if you effectively implement clause 7.6, right? We have an area where it's not, so it's not effectively controlled. We have an issue. What does the specific clause say? Clause 7.6a requires measuring equipment to be calibrated at specific intervals. We got some devices that were not calibrated, right? So we missed that interval. For the micrometer, sampled 8 and the summary are out or did not have unique identification. Does that make it a little more clear and even where it is to the requirements a little better? Makes people cite it, right? They makes them go back that there is actually a requirement there. There's a link. Uh-oh, it went to sleep. No. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Help me. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Huh. I was sleeping. I was sleeping.
How many more slides do you have, John?
There's a few. Oh, technical difficulties here. I can't even flip chart it now. Huh. Plan B. Let me get up and dance. We can try it. Does that make sense of what I'm talking about, though, as we're doing this? Be able to cite it and come back with the requirements. Those of you that do not or have not seen the 3-part format, does that make sense of why they're pushing the 3-part format? we've seen too many of these other general types of nonconformities. This is the same case in compliance audits as well as conformity audits. How many times I've seen some compliance audit reports that just have the same thing. You sit there and go, what do they really want? What are they saying? What did we do? So the three-part format is not just for doing it for an ISO 9001 audit. I can do it for any type of compliance audit the same way. Where's the big issue is the umbrella. Where's the impact? What do I do where's the requirement? What does it say that I'm supposed to do? And what am I not accomplishing? Technical terms. Who's going to edit that video? Go ahead.
Question on the impact there. You talked about that one, the 4 out of 8 were not conforming. Do you also try and put in about how many areas, for example, you looked at?
Well, that was what I checked 8, and 4 of them had problems. So that's telling somebody your sampling plan. So if you were going into an organization, right, and they knew, let's say they had 20 measuring devices in assembly. You sampled 8 of those, which is pretty representative, right, of there, and you found 4 as a problem. Well, if we found half of those, what's the suspect maybe of the ones that are still out there that you didn't check?
Yeah, I guess the question on the impact was, should we also maybe talk about, you looked at it in the assembly area, you looked at it in incoming, you looked at it in somewhere else, so you might have
And usually,
pervasive throughout there.
I usually will do that in the audit report, where as I get into the audit board and you start talking about measuring system, and you say, well, measuring system was basically in conformity except for the item, non-conformity, so that was found in the assembly area. So indicating that people, and you may even put a strength in there in another area. You may say shipping and, in process at certain points, incoming inspection was doing a very good job, of checking and had things there, and we had some problems in this one area. Then you usually will find other things in that area. So sometimes there's a pattern. It's not just measuring devices. Find out that's where the highest rejections are too. Now you question, is the rejections there because of the measuring devices? Or is the rejections there because of the way that we operate the area? Can you answer that question? No. But that's where the organization puts themselves into, right? So if they get a claim from a customer, where are they putting themselves into? Walk back into. Now I'm in a situation where my defense for product liability has been set up because I can't prove that my system was stable. So now I've opened myself up to product liability, which is another end I can work in a little bit. But see, there's where part of the impact comes in.
John, could we turn this around for a minute and let's pretend that we are on the other side and you or someone has come to audit us. How many of you have sat on that side of the table? Probably a lot of folks. What if you get those kinds of audit findings that we just saw, and it's not clear what you're supposed to do? How do you approach the auditor with that?
Or do you?
Or do you?
How many people approach the auditor? How many people don't? Now, there was more that said that they had it a minute ago. This is not participation. This is like I put my hand down here when I go to volunteer. It's like the military, take a step backwards, forwards. People don't like it because it's confrontational. I've heard a lot of auditees say, I just don't want to get the auditor upset. But the problem is, you're sitting here, who's getting the impact of this? You are. Because if you don't understand, you fix it. How many times do you change a system that wasn't broke? Lots. And what did it do? It actually caused a problem, a bigger problem, either for yourself or somewhere else in the organization. So there's another part of the impact or business impact that you have to deal with, is what did I do by doing this? What's the action that I took? What risks did I take by taking this change?
So would it be appropriate to ask that maybe maybe the
Oh, yeah.
observations be written in that nice 3-part format that you just described?
Or get details before you leave. You know, there's where the management rep really is really their part of their duty. And I don't know if we have management reps in here or some of your management reps just kind of thing, but I mean that's where the value of the management rep. Part of their responsibilities in that role is to interface with the auditor on findings to have discussions so that there's a good understanding. And they're supposed to be in have a good partnership type of operations there. So use your management reps, and if not, if you have a weak management rep, when I know there's some organizations that have, go talk to the auditor yourself. I have before I come back in there. I don't understand this. Can you give me some insight of what you saw? What was there? I wasn't there with you. What was the information that you looked at there? I really don't understand where to go. Because they got it in their notes. And if they don't have it in their notes, now we really got an issue. Because after that situation, in the 2000s, auditor notes are part of the official record. Because that's part of the objective evidence. You have to keep all your auditor notes as part of your evidence. So auditor notes have to be traceable back on third-party audits as well as first-party or second-party to the nonconformities and be there for some record retention length.
We may be getting close, but I suggest you move your slides forward a little sooner.
Robert! I can only dance so fast.
I apologize. This is the first time it's done this.
I don't know. It just doesn't like me. Statistically speaking.
Now, it was interesting, the phrase, if you can't cite it, you can't write it, I first heard from an A2LA ISO 17025 assessor, and turns out he was alluding to some ISO assessors several years ago who were kind of found guilty of giving opinions, and their contracts were no longer renewed.
We can tell we've done it on the third version.
Let's see where we were.
For the current slide, I'll get it. I'll move it.
Okay, let's see here. Let's blaze through. Do you remember where you were?
Yep. Stop.
Okay.
Don't move. We can even make it better. How about this one? Now this goes back to some of your own comments about information that would be needed. This is what I would consider a good nonconformity. Cited, evidence, where it is, who was involved, how many were involved. Because this one, both of these, can put you in a very bad situation of what? Recall. So if you're in assembly and that was the last operation before shipping, and that was your final inspection, you might be set up for a lot of other issues and money. So again, understanding and knowing the impact is very important, going back to what we were talking about on the impact. And that's basically what this one says. Because now I can do follow-up. I can do audit follow-ups with more information. Because we have a follow-up audit, right? We have to do, after any time a finding is done in an audit, it can only be closed in an audit by the requirements of auditing. 17021 and, let's look at a couple more. How about this one? I'll do these a little quicker. Could have a little more specifics there. Management set themselves up here, right? Yeah. Isn't this what they really did here? You're kind of, the auditor's trying to tell them that here. They decided they were going to post things as their action plan, right, in the training room, and they posted them to start with, and they didn't do anything with them. So here you're doing a follow-up kind of audit, and where's the due dates are all passed, and there's no updates. So who created the system for them? You know, and so they didn't meet the requirements of 563. So it could be better, but not too bad, right? Could add some more information. They should look at themselves when they did that one and ask a few questions. So again, management, what makes it vital, right, is management making, it has to be a key part in order to make the organization, and it's an understanding of their impact to the role. How about this one? Talking about AS9100. This is one I just seen recently. Apologize that the screen's this big and you have to kind of look. But basically it says that they were doing a risk assessment, but they interpreted the requirements of AS9100C's risk assessment to only be for safety. And they never really hit the product realization characteristics as the intent of the standard. So does that tell them that? Does that relate that information to a degree? Could be written a little better. Well, they didn't have anything. The problem was they did all safety, did a very nice safety, you know, for safety about risk assessments and where areas of the plant was, which was more of an OSHA's 18001, you know, type of item, but really didn't do anything for product characteristics. So it was really a major nonconformity because it meets 7.1.2.1 or 0.2 of the revised C standard of not having risk management for those areas. So there was no planning and risk management at all. And you know, it's a good three-part, but there's still, and there's impact in the aerospace management system, but as you can see, my point is to make you kind of see that even some that are good could be better, could be recognized as being good, but could you add? So think about the ones that we had as very weak. And how about this one? I'll make you sweat on this one. It might be type of nonconformity familiar to some. Doing test labs, some of you may be doing testing. It's a good nonconformity. How many people think it's a good nonconformity? How many people don't think it's a good nonconformity? How many people have no clue? No matter how much we talked about it so far today, you have no clue about it. Well, I'll tell you what, they started off right, and then they fell flat on their face. Because, what's the first two parts of the requirements talk about? Training. What does the objective evidence talk about? Procedures and uncontrolled documents. So you see how somebody can get totally and then confuse whoever, because if you start looking back to the objective evidence, what does that mean? That has nothing to do with training. So we got two ideas mixed in the same requirement. Totally no value added to this nonconformity at all. Matter of fact, if I was an organization, I'd be stunned trying to figure out what do you want me to really do? Because you cite to me about training, You talk about training procedure, but all your evidence is talking about uncontrolled documents. You know? So see how you can get off the pace, off the beaten path, and that's what this one basically kind of said. You can end up being good. This auditor I know is experienced, but this was in a surveillance audit. After we brought it to the auditor's attention, they kind of got changed. Unfortunately, it became 2 nonconformities, but for the auditee.
I would suggest that that's probably not uncommon as you start pulling the threads, it starts unraveling and things become compounded. And I think being able to differentiate and separate out.
Yeah, the point really of this one was for us as auditors too, to go back and look at what we write and make sure it makes sense to us. Because if we would gone back maybe and looked at this again and kind of said, does this really make sense? Is our objective evidence linked to the requirement that we're citing here? We should have seen a hole, there that something we didn't, did we have our notes mixed up, or did we get a break and we started writing something and then, started looking at something else later on? Sometimes that happens where you're starting something and then you get a break and then someone comes back in and you get your notes kind of rearranged, and so you wrote something down that shouldn't have been there. And we're all probably victims of it. This is an innocent type thing, but to the auditee, that wasn't value added, to start with. So that's basically what I, had in here talk about value and audit findings. Did that help out? Did we understand a little bit better what we're talking about on value added findings? You see that the 3-part format can help you if you can't cite it, type of concept, if we utilize this. And, when composing, as I said, put yourself in that auditee or the person that's going to be taking the corrective action and say, does this make sense? Do I give them enough information to go out there and be successful? And if you've done that, well, we've done the things that we want to do, type of concept. And I have to do a little promotion. I got to throw that in there. The Inspection Division next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday, is holding a mini conference in Westchester, Ohio, which is just the first exit out of Cincinnati on I-75. And it's mainly it's inspection. So we got inspection techniques. We have risk assessment and biomed and healthcare. And uncertainty measurements, talking about 17025 in labs. We have 2 things in labs, work and GD&T also. Because the prices are there just as we were talking about any training with ASQ. We're not there to make money, we're there to provide for the members. So if someone wants to attend to it for just one session, it's $60. If they want to go all day, it's $90. And if you got 2 people, they want to be all day, just make it $100. It's $120. So we're just doing there to cover our costs more than anything else and offering, the organization. So if you're interested there, you can go on the Inspection Division website and be able to pull it off on there for any other different information. If you want copies of today's presentation, I think I hit all the way in there. I don't know how to get back. But there's questions. Here's my business card. If you want, send me an email and I'll send you the presentation. I got nothing to come back onto this. So some of you, we had trouble reading it. If you think it would help you or help your organization, feel free. So that's it for me. Any other questions? So was it value added coming and listening to it? Yes. You learned something? Okay. Appreciate everybody's attendance.
Thank you very much.
Thank
John
you.
drove in from Ohio to be with us. And if you happen to know some of the names on the mini conference that he was just promoting, I know Dilip Shah, we know John, and we know some of the other folks there. If you are interested in measurement uncertainty or calibration, those are some really good folks. So in the absence of any other business, I say we call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.